Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the English episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Eli. Turns out, kills on water. It turns out Colonel Clegg and his people, Clegg and Charlie and that other dude that they killed, was that episode 3 that they killed him? I believe yes. Yeah, those guys were working for Kills on Water, and so now basically he wants to get rid of other competition or whatever, because it's like, regardless of the circumstances, those are people that you know, and he's talking to Eli like, right, this is the second time you like turn my life upside down, with everything that happened with his people getting massacred and along with his family, but also now this. So it's like, right, now you're messing with my business. So I need you to do me a favor. You're a pretty good killer. Because he doesn't know the one who shot Charlie, like, wasn't him. That it was actually Cornelia. But it's like, hey, you're a proficient enough killer. I need you to kill Black-Eyed Mog. And it was like, yeah, don't want to get close enough that you realize what that was about. It didn't, like, I didn't realize what her circumstances were until that, like, a few seconds before she said it. Because I totally missed it last episode, because I thought last time she popped up, because I was like, oh, those are just, like, scars on her face. I did not realize her eyelids and her, like, it's like, oh, that's what the goggles are for, because it's impossible for you to close your eyes, so your eyes are always out, they're always dried up. I was like, man. And obviously they took a part of her scalp too when she was 20, and she said, like, right, the only thing they didn't take was her virtue and her family. So, and I couldn't tell because of the way her hair was, but I was like, are they implying like they took her ears too, maybe? I don't know. But it turns out, like, she scalps a lot of people, because this is her retribution. That's what this whole series is, just kind of like, just people driven by revenge, what was done unto them, what they've done unto others. I mean, sometimes it ain't even a revenge thing. It is just kind of like it's just eat or be killed type of situation. I mean, this place is, you know, I mean, that's just what it is. It's just kind of like, it ain't a matter of like what you want it to be. It is what it is. So, but she scalps men, women, and children. And even then it's like, right, because on the way there, Cornelia was like, I saw a boy in a barn. I was like, oh yeah, like, I want them to suffer, because that's what this is all about. It's about retribution. She's like, I'm not going to stop until basically she's gotten everyone, like, this is, once again, it's for her, it's retribution. That's why she has such issues with any Native American people, you know, because of that. So when it's all said and done, Cornelia was like, right, she talked to John last episode. She's like, I know who Eli is. Kills on Water has him. Do you know who Kills on Water is? Well, yeah, he isn't a friend of yours, and he's going to ask my friend to murder you. And it's like, I don't want my friend to be dead, so I use this opportunity. She's like, right, I knew the big bag of money and everything would probably lead us to the situation that would basically catch you off guard. And gun underneath the table kills Mog, which I've never seen anything showcase that, but like, obviously firing the gun burned her legs badly, and so she ends up killing the other son, because it was like, oh yeah, like, I don't care what my sons are going to do to you, but I'm sure they're going to have fun. And I love when it comes to the second son, she's like, right, your mama said that you're going to like have fun. You know, the funnest thing for a woman in my situation would be like, they shoot your cock and balls off clean. But she's like, yeah, but I'm not in a fun mood. I'm not like in a funny mood right now. And the guy backs up and gets killed by who she calls No Trouble, the boy in the and it didn't even correlate when I saw him who he was. And once again, it is funny and interesting how things do work out. So she brings No Trouble along, brings Mog's goggles as proof of kill, and gets Eli back. Because I thought like, oh man, we're going to be dealing with Black-Eyed Mog maybe for an entire episode. It's like, nah, Black-Eyed Mog in totality had about 10 minutes of screen time or something like that. It's like, wow, I thought that was going to be a bigger thing, but I guess it's like, nah, I like the whole like, oh, her getting Eli, I thought that'd be more of an issue, but it's like, I guess it's like Kills on Water got what he wanted in the end, so it didn't matter. any beef he had with Eli. But it's also interesting because he's coming from the perspective of kind of like, right, you know, why did you wear the blue? He was like, because I was fighting for my people. He's like, those aren't your people. He's like, the enemy of my enemy. It's like, once again, it's like, yeah, I had enemies on all sides, and I joined with my enemy's enemy just to survive. And it's just like, yeah, but no matter what, you've got nothing to go back to. Like, oh, what are you going to do? Go back to Nebraska? He's like, yeah, I'm going to get those acres that are owed to me. It's like, they're never going to give that to you. Did you really think you were going to go back home and, you know, but it's like, or is it because you already know, like, somewhere deep down, you already know that that's never going to happen, that they're never going to let you, and almost implying, like, will you even live long enough to make it that far, is kind of what he's implying. So the two of them finally meet up again. Obviously, no trouble as Cornelia calls him, but we later on find out his name is White Moon. But as he's planning on helping her. Like, I love that moment of them, like, holding hands. And he's like, yeah, that wound, like, he's like, don't let it get infected. She's like, it won't. But he's also pointing to the heads, like, don't let your mind get infected by what you did either. Because she did kill 2 people. So it is a situation of, like, yeah, it is that rough thing of, like, this is at least the 3rd person that she's had to kill in total. That's 3 people in total she's killed. Charlie, now Black Mog, and one of her sons. So it's like, right, don't let, you know, but it's like, I appreciate that you did all this for me to get me back, that, you know? And so they eventually do, like, stop in camp, and because for him, he was going to see her through this all the way through. And it was this interesting conversation where we kind of learn from her perspective. Like, he's like, I don't want you to kind of be, but she's like, oh, Eli, you think this is a journey of hope? It's like, no. For her, this is a journey without fear because I'm already dead. For her, it's like, I have nothing to live for. Like, that's why I'm able to do this, because I don't have anything to fear. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to die. I'm already dead. You know, it's like, that is the most heartbreaking thing to hear. But it's like, for her, it's like, I went on this mission because he said, like, it was a short journey from, you know, but she's also like, right, you don't know where I came from. He's, you know, because it is a situation of, I think it was like, hey, I have a you have a secret you haven't told me. And she's like, kind of doesn't say anything, but he's like, don't worry, I have one too. And so that's why I'm like, I don't know if he knows that Melmont's, like, maybe he pieced it together by what she said and where, like, he's probably got wherewithal enough to know that Melmont is in, Wyoming, where the exact place she wants to go. So he's probably, that's what I wasn't sure of before, of like, is that why he's been helping her? Because it is like making up for the past, you know? It's like, right, like kills on water situation, just like Cornelia's situation. Like, he knows that there's some correlation there. I don't know. That's my big thing of, like, I don't know how much he's figured out on his own. And so maybe that's the secret hasn't told her, like, oh, I know what you're circling. I know the man you're after. Because he references, like, we got to go see Billy Myers. And I was like, that's interesting. Because jumping ahead a little bit, I mean, this was my big question last episode. I was like, oh, we doing this storytelling thing where these two storylines aren't happening at the same time. Everything in Wyoming and like Billy Myers and them aren't dead yet. Because I was under the impression, like, okay, the person who Billy's son saw after, like, he found his dad's body, I thought that was Kills on Water. I'm like, in retrospect, I'm like, was that actually Eli? Because at the time, Kills on Water is like, oh, do you know where Billy, McClintock, Flynn, and well, I don't even think he asked about Melmont, did he? I think he referenced Melmont, but I don't think he said exactly, like, do you know where he is? But that's why I'm like, oh, because maybe he didn't know, or maybe he did know. Because I was interpreted as like, oh, is that him trying to be like, oh, they're 6 feet under? That was my interpretation at the time, but now I'm like, maybe he legitimately didn't know where they were, but Eli knew exactly where they were, because he was told at the beginning of the season exactly where to go to look for them, so... Or maybe, once again, maybe he's always known where they were. So I thought that was interesting. And for him, especially that line where Cornelia was like, Billy Myers, it's like, oh, is he a friend? And he was like, no, at the time he thought we were. And it's like, where are you going? I'm going there to show him that he wasn't. Because it's like, Eli thinks, from Eli's perspective, it's like, oh, he thinks we're good. He thinks we're friends. We're allies because I let him go that day. I didn't stop him. But it's like, no, I'm coming to like rectify that. Let him know, hey, no, we're not friends. And I'm going to make damn sure you know it. So, but Eli and her had this really interesting conversation. Obviously, he's teaching her the stars about, northwest, east, and south, being able to kind of navigate if she's on her own. And it's almost being like, oh, like in case or she's like, oh, if you leave me, but obviously he has no intention, because she's asking like, is he going to go back home? And for him, it's like, his home, it's like, yes, it was one way when he was a boy. When he came back, he knew it was later on different. He's like, if I go back, it's going to be different again. That's just kind of like the way of things. And they had this really conversation about home and everything. What was it because they had this conversation earlier where she's like, I told you, like, she holding on to the pieces of her like son's hair in that locket. She was like, told you it was magic. He was like, there's no magic in this, Cornelia. It's just kind of like, it's dodging stuff, and it's all about aiming until you can't, and that's it. It's just like, yeah, eventually saying like, in one way or another, like you get your enemy before they get you, and eventually you get God. That's just all there is to it. That's the way of life here and everything. But later on, the conversation is that for her, he was like, right, you could always go back home afterwards. But for her, it's like, no, I can't. My son was my home, because she's like, yes, we were protected, but we found out why she lived on the grounds but not in the main house. It's because her and her son were seen because of, she, hints to it, like, yes, because of the circumstances of my son's conception, her family, like, because it's the perception of like, oh, our daughter is pregnant when her fiance is, because I figured I should have, because I was still like 70-30, like 70% being like, yeah, it's Melmont's child, but I was like, maybe it was Thomas's, but I'm like, no, that was stupid of me, because it's also like, that was also the thing, like, considering like the time frame, like child out of wedlock is frowned upon, so. But it's also because, like, it seemed like she was defiled. And I think maybe also having the baby probably wasn't, like, that probably, like, added more fuel to the fire when it came to her family circumstances. So she was hidden away. She was also talking about, like, right, those walls used to represent, like, oh my God, the coming future. And then basically those walls eventually became her prison, because she was stuck there. She was hidden away. She was a disgrace in her family's eye, because it would have been like, wait, she's having a baby, but her fiance's not here. Like, oh, where's her husband? It would have been conversations like that. And also finding out, because then it would have been like oh, did she have a baby with someone out of like, what, like, did she, it would have turned into not a situation of it would have, it did turn into a kind of blaming her. And it just, because of what kind of effect it would have held on their family, is I think why they did that. And so for her, it's like, I have no home to go back to. It's like, that place didn't want me or my son, and she buried her son beneath like a willow tree, I think she said, by a lake. And, so for her, it's like, there is no home to go back to, because he was my home. And Eli shares, he's like, this thing is something my wife protected. She guarded. And he was like, basically, she would hang it up in the star, the star garden. And when we moved, she took it down. When we came back, she put it back up. And so part of me was wondering, like, was that supposed to be part of the reason why he wanted to go back to Nebraska, was to put this back up? That's what I kind of interpreted from that story. But basically for him, it's like, this is my home. And he points to Cornelia. It's like, that is your home. And for him, his home is like, right, it's here by your side. And they kiss, but she pushes away and she apologizes. Because part of me wonders, the last time she was with anyone was probably, and I don't want to put it in like that obviously that was not a consensual situation. But I'm saying like that might be the last time she would, like, so probably being with Eli like probably brings that back up, or it's just a reminder of that to some extent. I don't like, that's my immediate interpretation. Like the trauma of just like the last time like you were in a sexual situation, it was rape. It wasn't like a consensual loving situation. So maybe that spurred up in that moment. Because like for her to run to the like throw off all like her heavier garments and just like douses herself in like dirt. And I guess it's just I didn't know how to fully interpret that. I don't know if it's just a thing of, you know, she wants to feel anything else on her skin because maybe it's just she's feeling. I think it was just too much all at once, you know, and that's how I'm interpreting that. And it almost feels, I don't know, like her burying, like getting the dirt over herself, like once again, I don't know if that's supposed to kind of like connect with the line of her saying like, no, I'm dead, you know? I don't know if that's what that's supposed to correlate to or not, but when she wakes up, she finds out that White Moon was gone, like taken by some others, and so Eli wants to get him back. And so they end up meeting with this, what was the guy's name, like McKay or something like that. And that ended up being a conversation because he's like, oh yeah, I'm opening this school for Native Americans. And it's like there, they can go in Native Americans and they can come out white. And I'm like, this probably severely connects to that conversation that Cornelia had with that guy a couple episodes ago about like, oh, the only way for a Native American to survive is for them to become white. Like, I think that same conversation was kind of happening here. So she was I think, at first I thought she was just disgusted, but I was like, as the episode, like, when we got to the end of the episode, I was like, right, the wound on her leg got infected. And, like, that's why he kept checking her to be like, oh, you're warm. But she's kind of like, no, I'm fine, I'm good. She didn't want him worrying about her, because I think for her, she's like, I don't want to slow us down. I want to keep moving forward. Because that's the only goal she really had in mind. And so, like, you know, she hated hearing what this McKay guy said. But for him, it's like no, I'm doing what I was taught. Basically, he's like, yeah, like, because it's like, right, you're all about, because he was like, instead of like wiping out the Native Americans, the easiest way was to kill all the buffalo and starve them out. Which he's like, yeah, that tactic was used against my people in a very maybe just Scotland in general. But he's like, yeah, when the English came and did their thing, you know, now he's just it's that sad thing of passing the buck of like, yeah, this was done to my people, now I'm doing it to someone else's people. But it's like, yeah, this is the way how, you know, I want to help the Native Americans out by bringing them into the fold of, and yes, I know I'm doing the whole Native American thing, but it makes me feel weird saying Indian, so that's why I stopped doing it. I know it's like, it's because of the times and stuff like that, which is such a weird phrase for me to use under so many different contexts. But it's just like, I just like, just for my own posterity's sake, I'll just say Native Americans. I don't want to just, once again, it's like they're specifically saying Indian, because they're saying that specifically because no one was going to be like, oh, the Native Americans. No, you know? So I do know that, but that's just a me thing. But for him, it's like, we're all under this great banner of the United States of America flag, and it's like, the only way we need to all come together, but all together as Americans, and kind of abandon what they were, essentially. So he kind of rids them of what makes them, you know, the Native Americans that they are. Like I said, it's that same conversation beforehand. I think they purposely kind of brought that back full circle in that regard. And he has two women nearby who are examples of, hey, I put, basically, I'm washing their minds. I'm you know, kind of putting them in a servitude position. And one of them was, I think he called her Rose, but it's Touching Ground from the first episode. And Eli immediately recognized her. He recognized, because like I said, I didn't recognize it, but White Moon is her son. Like, we saw him in the first episode, and I didn't realize that at the time. Obviously, this ended up being a whole conversation about things change, like nothing stays the same, because Eli called Nebraska by what it was originally called. But the guy was like, oh, you're trying to teach me something. And Eli just kept referring to it as its original name. And he's like, yeah, language has changed, son. Don't you realize that? And the moment, like, Touching Ground came to, like, touch his cup or whatever, he puts his hand down and he signals to her, like, hey, your son is here. And she ran to him. It's like, that woman is the widow of Running Hulk. and that boy is her son. And Eli's like, that's why when we met up fully, why touching ground, because if you do go back and look, he did stay further away from them because he recognized who Eli was. He didn't say anything at the time. So it's like, all right, we need to get out of here while we have the opportunity. And Touching Ground showed up and she wanted them to take her son with her because it's like, I can't run away. Like, I can't, like, I want you to at least leave with my son, take him somewhere. I'm glad to know, like, being able to be reunited with him in that moment, knowing that he's okay. And that is that element of, it is sad yet beautiful how everything worked out, because it's like, right, Cornelia being where she was at the right time, saving him from Black Eyed Mog, and now it's like, right, at the very least, he had this moment with his mom. You know, they found each other again, even as short-lived as it was, and I think that obviously cuts deep for her too, where it's like, right, a mother and child, and a mother doing whatever she can to protect her child. It's like, right, take him far away from here, you know? And as they were leaving, the guy made that whole point early on about using this very specific rifle, and how that rifle, like, a few more yards, he could have beaten the record, and he's trying to shoot them down. And I think my initial thought was Eli was going to try and offer the money to the guy. Like, I thought that was kind of the point of it, but I guess it was like, no, like, because there's so much cash in there, it could stop any incoming bullets for now or something like that. But I thought maybe like the moment the cash started flying up, then it would turn into a situation of like, oh, maybe they see the cash flowing and they're like, oh, well, maybe, I don't know if that was the end result or whether it was just like hey, we could use this to kind of block some bullets. And obviously it's like, and Cornelia moving White Moon out of the way the moment the guy's kind of got his shot lined up, and he's like, what? No, oh, it's unfair. She moved him. We play fair or something like that. You're like, Jesus, like, you know, the sad thing of like, yeah, I mean, why do I continue to be surprised that people are turning him in particular? He's already seen it as a sport. He's like, oh, I'm gonna beat my record. You know, I'm gonna beat get my yard record of like all of this. And I'm just like, damn, dude, it sucks. Luckily, Touching Ground took care. She clapped that ass. I'm super glad she did that. They knocked the other guy out and he fell from like the scaffolding and stuff. So, and obviously some guys from the place chased after Eli and them, and Eli put them down. And obviously Touching Ground calls out, and so does Eli, you know. Kind of like these, I think, war cries. And she saw below that there were the people gathered, and she closed her eyes and accepted. She knew, like, right, as long as I can make sure my boy's okay, because they were able to get White Moon from underneath the horse. And so she ends up going down, and in that moment, Cornelia ends up saying, like, she's so sorry, and finally passes out from, I think, the infection ended up spreading. So now he's got to get her and White Moon out of there. So it is a sad situation, but as long as, like, for her, it's like, I'll be able to, you know, and probably for her, it's about the situation of the death path or path, because it's like, the episode title, I think, is called The Path of the Dead, but I think it's just called The Death Path in the show, or at least maybe I'm saying, I don't remember now. But on some level, part of me is like, at least she's with her husband again, like she's with Running Hawk. I don't, you know, it still doesn't make that situation any more tragic, but it's like, for her, it's like, she was willing to do whatever once again, make that sacrifice for her child to live on. And also, it's like, because the guy hadn't fully broken her yet, is what he was kind of implying, and he won't do it to anyone else. I mean, sadly, that school will probably still remain, and what happened there, what started there, will probably still happen, but, you know, or maybe now that he's dead, maybe it gets shut down. I don't know. Because I think those school type of situations, I think that historically, like, I mean, obviously the show is playing into, like, historical accuracies in some regard, but I think those were things, like, weren't those actually, like, built and put on reservations? Because I do feel like I do remember, yeah, because I think the show Dark Winds talks about a very similar thing. about like, yeah, being sent to schools kind of like that. So I do believe that is, yeah, I do. Like because I do feel like I do remember something like that from history class. But like I said, I think Dark Winds, the TV show, kind of touched on those. Obviously, that's like that show's taking place in like the 70s, so like I don't know how long those type of schools were open for and stuff, but once again, it's for those purposes of basically getting rid of any, it's like making forcibly assimilating of like leaving behind everything that you were, all that, your culture and everything, and just coming out white. I guess is kind of the nomenclature you can kind of like associate with it, just kind of going out. I don't know. But other than that, in this episode, we also have the Trayford situation with Thomas. It's still obviously the whole cattle situation with Miss Myers. And so the sheriff is involved, and obviously the conversation about Melmont comes up, and it's like, oh yeah, like, because he was like, oh, the herd situation. He's like, yeah, I saw kind of like how that can kind of go sideways in 86. But Thomas is like, yeah, 75. I've been here since 75. I've seen what this country can make of people and what it does. And obviously, like, it turns into the whole conversation about Melmont. And he's like, yeah, a man made his money. Considering where you were and obviously where his standing is right now. And Thomas, you could tell, was like irritated by it. It's like, right, that man didn't make his money by trade. And it's like, yeah, but he's kind of moving into that territory now. And it's like, yeah, you could do this and that. But he's like, so it's basically the sheriff is in Melmont's pocket. It's like, right, I hope there's enough room in there for you with all the people that are in his pocket. Because Thomas isn't like, I'm not biting. I'm like, that man, I know what kind of monster he is, what monstrous things he did to get to where he is now. And so it's kind of like, okay, so I don't know what I just, because he's in bed with a man like Melmont, I'm like, so that shows that the sheriff's not the greatest person. So I guess Thomas was coming at it from a perspective of like, oh, your people situation, so it didn't paint Thomas in the best of light either, but because he was coming at it from like you people, like blah, 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 blah situation. But now it's like, okay, the sheriff isn't that great of a person because he's in bed with a monster like Melmont and everything. So, but obviously Thomas, I don't think fully knew that at the time. He was coming at it from, who you are and your people coming to this country type of situation. So once again, I think that was kind of like, at least maybe it was meant to mislead you and make you go like, yeah, Thomas is kind of an asshole, but also like, I think that's a byproduct of just, once again, what this, like, I don't think he's the same person he was when he came here in 75. Like, a lot happened that obviously shift him and change him in these 15 years, to be kind of like the mean person that he is. But regardless, the sheriff does end up talking to, God, I'm like, that sounded so like weird, just saying like, oh, the mean person that he is. I'm like, that sounds so like weird to say it. Like, I don't know why he phrased it like that. I should just said the shitty person that he can be. Either way, the sheriff talks to Miss Myers about the cattle situation. It's like, yes, Maverick Law, he does have right by it, but it's like, hey, so here's pictures of your husband. Apparently those teeth mark situation, I was like, I wonder is that, because apparently Billy tried to cut his, and I wonder is that I thought like whoever came to kill them did that, but it's like, no, they already had those marks well before now. I think those are marks from maybe when they did whatever they did in that, to the Cheyenne, like, in particular with Melmont, that maybe like some of the people bit them in retribution, trying to like, man, maybe that's what that's supposed to be about. Maybe that's what those marks. Apparently Flynn still had his, but Billy tried to like cut his away or whatever. But like Martha wasn't, Billy's wife wasn't really too concerned about that, so she's just kind of like, and I love the sheriff. It's like, oh, my condolences for your loss, and she's like, well, he hasn't gotten them yet, and the sheriff is like, ma'am, I'm talking about your husband, and Martha was almost like, oh, okay, and I was like, oh, it kind of seems like, and even he immediately was like, yeah, it seems you're more worried about the cattle than your husband, and that line kind of says it all, where she was like, yeah, like the cattle, like when the cattle broke my arm, it was by accident. So it's like, okay, so Billy was on some abusive shit. So for her, it's like, the cattle are worth more to me than that man ever was. You know, he wasn't a good man through and through. So you're like, oh, cool. Just every episode, you're like, I figured you weren't a good person. And just every other episode is like, oh man, he's even worse of a person than you thought he could have been. So it's like, cool. You know? But Martha rolls up on Thomas's place and ends up killing one of her cattle because she would rather kill them than let Thomas have them. And then Kelly's like, you got one. Next time we won't be so kindly. Let her leave. And you just see Thomas kind of like looking, and I don't know. Because once again, the whole point is right. Because I didn't catch the exact wording to that line, but I remember him like, oh, like saying like Billy, men like Billy and Timothy shouldn't have cattle. Well, he said they shouldn't have a second chance at life or something, considering everything that they did. They got dishonorably discharged for what they did, but it wasn't even for what they actually did. It was just for abandoning their post and then also going to a whorehouse. That's what they got in trouble for. So, and the last thing we see with that is the sheriff coming to visit Martha, and that's the last we get him that situation. But the next episode, because this is only a mini series, so the next episode should be like the finale, the series finale. So how this all plays out, like I said, I do believe it's all going to like come together where it's like, once again, all that stuff in Wyoming, where we are with Cornelia and Eli hadn't happened yet. So I think it's all going to eventually connect and come back together. So how this ultimately all ends, we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I believe Cornelia's coming out of this alive, but maybe Eli doesn't. Because we don't know how far... I'm saying all that, but it could be like neither one of them makes it out of this. And that could be like some of the last thoughts in her mind is both of them dying. We just don't know. Because I was coming at it from the perspective of like, yeah, this is her... Because the opening implies like it's her telling this story from further down the line. But I mean, we don't know if this could be like weeks later, months later, years later, or once again, it could be her dying, and this could be like some of the last thoughts in her head or something like that. We just don't know. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all comes to an end. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.